The question then here becomes, where do we put our faith? The temple buildings in Jerusalem were not only impressive religious symbols, they were also symbols of national hope in the presence of God. The disciples might then have wondered if God was going to allow the destruction of the temple, then perhaps God would abandon or forsake them also. Here's exactly where I get uncomfortable with this passage. If we read church instead of temple, then what does it say to us about putting our faith in the church? Isn't that what we're supposed to do? Even when earthquakes shake us to our foundations, when the tsunamis flood us with anxieties about global warming, and the towers in Manhattan crumble to the ground, at least we have our churches to cling to and ride the wave of existential angst. Aren't we supposed to put our faith in the church, which, after all, is the body of Christ? We look at this building, and we look at our beloved stained glass Jesus with his opened arms, beckoning arms. And we remember all of those who worked diligently in order to build this building, and those who work to still keep this building functioning. And then we think of those who work to maintain our financial records so that we have the money that we can turn the lights on and the heat on for worship and fellowship. But at some point we know that this church too will come crumbling down. So it is obvious. Yes, indeed, we do put our trust in the church, but not the building. The body of Christ is not bound by brick or mortar, but by the work that we do in his name. When you read ahead in Mark's gospel, you begin to understand what Jesus was talking about when he talked about the destruction of the temple. He used the temple as a metaphor of his own body. Hearing this narrative this time again when I read it, I also wondered about the destruction of my own body and the bodies of those whom I share this faith. Visiting Albert and Bob in the hospital this week has been difficult, and also has been a dear blessing to witness as they both endure their failing bodies with hope and courage, and with their faith in God very much intact. After all, God is a God of hope, wanting us to endure and to keep strong in our faith during times of distress. Jesus warns each of us to not get distracted when uncertainty and fear surround us. Even when we are tempted to put a sign around our necks proclaiming that the end is near because we've just had too much to bear, Jesus reminds us that these are but the birth pains of something new about to happen. What seems like destruction to us becomes a call to transformation, to break with the status quo, to work for liberty and justice and equality for all. This isn't the end, folks. This is but the beginning. This is the beginning of our faith commitment, not to this church building, but to doing that which Christ has called us to do, feeding the hungry, giving drink to those who are thirsty, binding up the brokenhearted, letting the oppressed rise up, making this world ready for the Prince of Peace to come again.